Welcome back to the Evolution of Confidence. And well, look who we have here. It is none other than Stephen Albertine, my husband and owner of Landmark Title in South Florida. Welcome, Stephen.
Good to be here.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, this is not the usual thing that I like to do. Talk about myself.
It's definitely taken quite a few asks for me to get Stephen to the table. He kept saying, I'll let you know. And finally I texted him and said, what's your availability? We're putting it on the calendar.
Yeah, obviously everyone knows I'll let you know means nah.
It means never. So I'm just going to get right into this. Okay. I've actually never been more nervous for a podcast. I don't usually prepare much for these because it's like, whatever. But I feel like there's a lot on the line right now. Okay. So, Stephen, is one of the reasons why you became a lawyer is it because of the title Esquire?
No, but actually, I'm a JD, Juris Doctor.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that.
Doctor of law.
A Juris Doctor. Is that why you guys wear the coats?
Maybe, I don't know.
At graduation?
Kind of looks like Harry Potter. Yeah.
Hat?
Yeah. But so that's a thing. But
I was asking you because when I wanted to become a lawyer, when I was doing political science, the main reason pretty much that I wanted to do it was to be called a lawyer. But once I realized when I read your business card that it said at the end. And I said, what is And you said Esquire. I was like, if I had known that, I probably would have gone forward with it.
It's that important to you?
Some people like a title. They're like, It's an achievement. I get to be an Esquire.
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. I honestly, I don't know like what it stands for. It's probably some old Latin thing. I mean, who knows? But maybe it just means attorney. I don't even know. No one ever told me. It's just something you get after you've.
So you've never answered the phone like, this is Stephen Albertine, Esquire?
No, that would be terrible. That would be embarrassing.
Okay, let's hit the next question. Now, this is an issue that I know you don't have an issue with. So do you believe that time blindness is a real thing? Or do you think it's an excuse?
Time blindness?
Like where people have an issue like me, where I am never on time.
Oh God.
And some people blame that on like, oh, it's like a mental thing where like they cannot be on time because they don't understand time.
Is this like a thing? This people say that's like the excuse. It's a medical condition.
I don't think it's a medical condition, but there are times where I think like, okay, I've got to get there at 11:30. So I work back from that. Okay, I've got 30 minutes to get there. So then I got to and then I always get it wrong. And then I have to yell at myself in the mirror, like, time is real. Time is real. You have to go.
I've heard you say this before, but yeah, I've gotten it wrong before too. Where like if we're traveling and we're flying, you have to be like, oh, I have to be there an hour before, and then it's going to take this long to get there. And then I've gotten that math wrong before. But it's not like all the time I'm getting it wrong. At that point, I think there's something else going on.
I think people think it's like a chronic illness.
Okay, you have. It's not you just don't keep track of time. That's the problem.
See, that's what people think. They're like, oh, I'm disrespected if someone's late. But I think some people they have more trouble than others. Do you think that that's BS?
Oh, 100%. There's no doubt that that's BS. That's total, like, if you know you have to be somewhere at 2:00 and there are things that have to be done before you have to get there, you generally know how long it takes for those things to get done. But if you're not paying attention, like you often are not paying attention, then yeah, time gets away from you, and then 2:00 hits, and everyone's sitting there like, "Can we leave now?" And no, we can't leave.
We can't leave, but there are factors. Is there anything when you get to the closing table? So Stephen and I work together a lot where We work on the same deals. Sometimes I'm there when you go to closing, and you're definitely an introverted personality. When you get to the closing table, though, I'll hear through the wall, and I'm like, where are these jokes coming from? You're like Mr. Charismatic. What's happening? You're getting the laughs. You're getting all the laughs. Okay. Yeah. Do you do anything mentally before you go into the closing table that's like, all right, I got to like shift gears?
No, but I've been doing it so much and for so long that I think well, okay, so let's back up for a second. It depends on what day you get me. If Cammie wasn't sleeping the night before and I'm tired and I've been up since like 3 a.m, you're not going to get you probably get no jokes. You're probably just going to get the basic, this is what this means, please sign. But yeah, I mean, if I'm feeling good, then I think it's just I've been doing it for so long that I just, when you first start doing something like that in front of people, especially if you're not an outgoing person like me, you get kind of nervous, right? But I don't ever get nervous anymore. This may sound bad, but I truthfully don't care. I mean, I care about the people and their deal, but I don't care about what people think of me while I'm sitting at the table is what I mean. Like if they think I look like an idiot or I'm dressed like this. This is usually what I look like.
So do you have any embarrassing stories or like weird things that have happened at the closing table where you were in shock?
Nothing where I've been in shock, but there's definitely been a lot of there's been arguments, not with me, but between parties or other people that have been at the table. But I mean, no, it's not like we don't get people tearing off their clothes and running out or doing something strange.
You never know. I've
had people cry. Some people cry. It's sad.
Yeah,
I've had a lot of
sad.
older folks. You've probably seen this.
Yeah, I don't like that.
It's like a house that they've had for a long time. Their kids grew up. It's really sad, actually. And they're selling it for whatever reason. Not that they wanted to. And, they're crying, and that's a little tough.
That is sad, definitely. Yeah. I've definitely walked in on someone naked during a showing.
Oh, okay. Well, that's in a house. I mean, if you're getting naked in my office, there's a problem.
There's definitely a problem, for sure. There's no nudity happening there.
No.
What's the hardest part about balancing being a dad and owning your own business?
Time. The same problem everyone has is there's not enough time in the day to be a great father and do a great job at work, and balancing that is kind of difficult. And then also not bringing work home with you. In the you're laughing.
I'm laughing because I do this.
We're talking about not physically bringing work home, but obviously just bringing the baggage home. Yeah, sorry. Bringing the baggage home with you. That's, that can be a difficult situation, especially if something bad happened that day, right? Trying to compartmentalize and put that to the side. And, I'm not great at it either. Sometimes I come home upset. You remember, this is actually kind of funny. I don't know if it's funny, but when we first started dating, Mari was in college still, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
I was 21.
I used to come home, and I don't think we were at that point. Were we living? No, we weren't living together, were we? Or maybe we were.
Maybe.
I don't know, but it doesn't really matter. So either we were living together or she would be at my apartment when I would get home, and I would be in a bad mood, and she would always be like, "Why do you come home in such a bad mood?" And she would kind of be upset about it. And then fast forward several years after she's been in business for a little while, and now this is the way that she comes home. And I don't always point it out, but I point it out every once in a while. And it's funny because life just beats you down.
It does. You used to say, all I want to do is stare at the wall. I don't know how to explain it. I just get home and I want to stare at the wall. And at that time, because I was in college, I wasn't living in the real world. So I had a lot of time to like clean and like get ready and like do all these like fun stuff, things throughout the day aside from my classes. So I was in such a different headspace. And then you would come home. We were just like on different pages where I was like, all right, you're home. Like I have all this energy.
And I was like, no, I have a headache and I'm dealing with people who are like, it's like dealing with toddlers sometimes, or just people are just angry.
And now I understand what that is like.
Yeah. So, that not, especially when you have kids, right? I mean, they don't know. They don't know that like, oh, it's a hard day at work, Dad. No, they don't care, So like trying not to let that melt into your personal life, it's kind of difficult. I mean, I don't have the answer. I don't know if anyone does. I mean,
no, it's interesting that you say that because I think we thought about that a lot with our relationship. And then you're right. Like I did have somebody on the podcast, this woman, Miriam, who was talking about how she got like a babysitter for her business because it's not just the time that you don't have, it's the energy. And I've noticed that too with the kids, like where if I'm super overwhelmed with work, even though if I have the hours with them, I'm like more irritable or more like I don't have the patience that I do if I just have a little bit more like me time, I guess.
I now understand why people say like they're the greatest thing that happens to you, but it's also like very difficult or whatever version of that people say. I understand it now because I would never want to live my life without our kids. But, man, it was so much easier before them.
And you don't even know when you're in it. Like you complain about these things. And then when you're running on like 4 or 5 hours of sleep consecutively for months, you just see things from a different perspective. And I find I just have less patience with work stuff where I used to be so like, oh, like I have all the time in the world. I've noticed that even with, I don't know, just anything with work, I'm like, all right, get over it. Like,
yeah, well, because if someone's wasting your time, that's time that could have been used to either do something else with, another client or your kids.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, if you're just jerking me around here, and you are, it's different when it's like somebody who like legitimately is just they don't know or. But there are some people who are just like, they're time wasters and they're scum of the earth.
But there are people who are like, oh, I want to manifest, so I'm going to go look at houses or I'm going to go ask a realtor to take me around or whatever. But which is when you're in your early 20s and you don't have that much responsibility, it's like, okay, it's part of the business. But then, like you said, there's like a resentment factor that comes in when you have kids, I think, where you can't blame it on the person because the person doesn't care. Like the client is never going to, I've learned that the hard way, where I'll cry and complain to my mom and I'm like, but I showed the house and like I got somebody to come help and Stephen helped and I could have been with the baby. And she's just like, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care.
They don't.
That's the best way to get over it.
Yeah, I guess just to realize that you should only be looking out. Well, you shouldn't only be looking out for yourself, but like you're the number one when it comes to business. Like you gotta figure out like what your priorities are when it comes to the business, and you just gotta stick to those because otherwise people will just waste your time.
Did you experience that in the beginning of taking on the business where like maybe you weren't used to dealing with people on that level and you kind of have shifted? Is there anything that you've learned? Because you've owned the business for now, how long?
So I graduated from law school in 2013 and, but then I was up in, I guess we should just go over like.
Yeah, I was going to say.
How
did this start from high school? Because we went to the same high school.
Yeah, we went to the same high school, but 7 years apart, right?
7 or 8.
Yeah. So we didn't know each other, obviously. But then after I graduated high school, I went to Tufts. And then after that, it was 2008, so the absolute worst time to come out of college. No jobs. And really, I mean, kind of to go back to your question about the Esquire thing, my dad's a lawyer. I mean, so obviously I had familiarity with lawyers and the practice of law, but I didn't really want to become a lawyer. It was really just because I didn't have any other good options. And I figured if the labor market's going to be this tough, I might as well get some extra skills to, market myself. Because, all my friends were getting like sales jobs, or a lot of them went into commercial real estate in New York, or, whatever they were doing. So, and I didn't really want to do that stuff. So, so I took a year off after Tufts and lived in New Jersey, where my family's from. And I worked at a law firm. Wasn't a bad experience, but it wasn't great. I mean, it was, a 9 to 5 they did foreclosures. So
was that before you started law school?
Yeah, I took a year off and worked at a law firm in New Jersey.
Why did you do that? Were you like, okay, I want to see if I like it?
Well, first of all, because it was partly my fault, because I made a decision late in my senior year to go to law school. And by that point, I hadn't taken the LSAT yet.
Okay, so you had to prepare.
So it was just a timing thing. And then also I needed like an extra year to just mature or something.
Yeah.
I was kind of still immature.
That's funny, because I was going to ask you that. Like, do you recommend, if somebody's out of college and they're like on the fence, they're like, I kind of want to go to law school, kind of don't, would you recommend that they take a gap year, or do you think it's better to just like go right into it if you can?
I mean, I think it's good to explore other options. Don't do what I did and go work for a law firm. I mean, to be honest with you, anyone who asks me, because I get a lot of people who find out I'm a lawyer and they go, my daughter or my son is thinking about going to law school, or they're studying for the LSAT or something. I'm like, don't do it. It's not worth it. There's too many lawyers. It's hard to make good money. They're, I don't know. I think there's other things you can do in this economy that would be better off for you. But, some people like it and some people want to help other people. And it's one way you can do it is, by doing law. And, I guess it is kind of like an accomplishment and a little bit of a prestigious thing, although I don't really think of it that way. I do get a lot of people. It's kind of funny to go back. I should have said all this stuff when you asked me about the Esquire thing, but sometimes, and this may be a man and woman thing, I don't know, but sometimes I'll have people who work for me, which are mostly women. They'll say something to a lawyer or even a non-lawyer, and the person will just dismiss it or say like, "Oh no, that's not how it's going to go." Then I'll get on the phone and say basically the same thing, and they'll say, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure, we could do that. Yeah, we could." So I don't know, because I obviously can't tell if it's someone being kind of sexist, and it's like because a man saying it, now they're like, to be honest with you, I don't really think that's what it is. I think it's the title of, a lawyer's now saying this to me.
Yeah, I think it's that.
So if a lawyer is saying it, even it's with other lawyers too. Lawyers are some of the worst people with this. They won't take what a non-lawyer is saying as legitimate. And sometimes, in a lot of cases, paralegals are more knowledgeable than the lawyer is, because the paralegal is doing most of the work.
It's kind of like with nurses and doctors and stuff. Like, are they a nurse practitioner? Similar. I don't know if they're as qualified as a doctor when they have a lot of the same schooling. I mean, I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah, neither am I. But at the same time, if I had to get surgery, I want a doctor doing
right.
it.
Like you need that you need the ESC, or you need the MD.
You need the ESC.
Like you need something at the end.
Right.
But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, there's some value to what they bring to the table. I'm not saying they don't. It's just that the way people perceive it is like it seems like it's a bigger deal than it actually is. I don't know. But I will say, going back to, people who want to go to law school, to be honest with you, I think we should change the way law school works. I think it shouldn't be 3 years. I think it should be maybe 1.5 years of school, and the rest of it should be an apprenticeship, because you learn almost nothing in law school about being a lawyer, like the day-to-day of being a lawyer.
Right.
And the law that you learn, I mean, laws are state specific. So, you do learn some basics that are helpful, but at the end of the day, you need to learn the law in the jurisdiction you're practicing in. And, I went to school up in New York. So some of the classes were kind of tailored to New York, right? And that wasn't helpful to me here. I had to learn stuff here, and you only learn it by doing it, really.
That is true. So you don't feel like working at the law firm really did that for you?
No, only because I was like a peon, you know. I was like it was like a foreclosure factory, and the people there were nice. I have no problem with any of the people there. It was just, you know, what I was doing was like one piece of the puzzle. I didn't really understand what I was doing. And it was kind of miserable because people, I mean, what we were foreclosing on people, we were representing banks. And so, you know, we would get people calling in, crying. I mean, it was terrible.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not like ideal. It's like probably what divorce lawyers go through. It's like they're dealing with people arguing all day, every day. I'm sure they're not the happiest people.
Right. And so you feel like it's super important to kind of learn on the job before you're committing to something.
You have to. I mean, at least in law, you have to. I mean, there's no way around it. Like I said, I mean, there's so many like little things that you need to pick up on to practice law that they aren't going to teach you in law school. What they teach you to do is how to think and how to analyze problems and how to write and all that kind of stuff, which is important. I'm not saying it's not. That's why I think it should, you should have at least a year or maybe 2 years of law school. But I think there needs to be a portion of it that's like an apprenticeship.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean,
when you did real estate, it's like, you picked up a lot through your parents.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? That test that you took. I mean, do you think you could have just taken the test and then been like, I'm a real estate agent?
No, I don't think the test, I don't remember anything about the test. It's like you remember either, the stuff that my parents taught me, I learned a ton about, like how to host open houses, like how to search the MLS, how to answer the phone the correct way, how to talk to people, like that the day-to-day stuff that's vital to grow your business. Because like you're saying, you could become a lawyer, you could become a realtor. It doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be successful. And I think that's what a lot of people assume about lawyers is that, okay, you pass the bar and instantly you are making a ton of money.
Most lawyers are making, I mean, it's not like chump change, but I mean, most of them are just making like 50, 60 grand, maybe less depending on where you live. I mean, in the scheme of things, when you do undergrad in law school and if you didn't have someone paying for those bills, you got hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. 50 grand isn't going to cover anything.
Yeah, 100%. And speaking of our parents, we kind of both have started businesses from knowledge that we've learned from our parents. Like your business started with your dad, my business, my parents were realtors, and I kind of learned that way. How do you think someone could, if they didn't have that like guidance, what would you tell them to do if they wanted to go be an attorney, whether they want to be in title or like a prosecutor or something like that? What would be like your number one tip?
Well, so number one tip for somebody who wants to practice law and like they're like what, in high school or college? Or don't do it. No.
That's literally what you told me.
Yeah. I honestly think that, you should experience other things to see if it's something you really like, because again, also, unless you're going to get into a good law school or you're going to be top 10 in your class, you're not getting a job at like the major law firms in any major city. They don't care. That's what they're looking for. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, those kids, some of the top 10 in my school were all really smart kids and they were, they deserve what they got. But if you think that like you're going to go to law school and then you're going to like work for Greenspoon Martyr and you're going to be like the top making, top associate making six figures, you're just not. And so I think, and a lot of law schools got sued a while back because they were kind of inflating their numbers with regard to like what kind of jobs people were getting after law school and things related to that. And I don't really remember exactly where those lawsuits went, but I mean, that's, that happened. So there was a lot of people, especially, after 2008, who went to law school thinking, oh, this is something great. And it ended up being just another thing that they had to pay for that now there's nothing they can really do with it.
I mean, that's kind of one of the biggest takeaways here today is, I think, and I try to talk about that a lot on this podcast, is what's the reality behind the career? Because a lot of us go after things because of the achievement, the recognition. Oh, I want to be a lawyer, blah, blah, blah. But when I talk to you about it and you kind of explained to me, or I saw in person, oh, this is the actual day-to-day, that completely changed things for me. Same thing with doing an internship, which for a lot of people is a, kind of a privilege, because a lot of people have to do that alongside of a job or alongside of something else that's going to contribute or kind of answer those questions for you. How important do you think it is for people to be transparent about the income that they're actually making? Do you think it's something that they should share more, or do you think it's fine to keep that under wraps?
Transparent to who?
To the world.
No, I don't think anyone should talk about their money. I think, just for like practical reasons, it's just what good can come of it. And also, I'm talking about like specifics. Like, if you want to say like, it's different for you because people can kind of look it up.
Right.
More or less. Right. They can see what you sold a house for, blah, blah, blah. They can't actually see what you made, but.
How do you like our work dynamic?
I like it. It can be difficult working with your spouse, right?
Well, when we had the property management business, it was definitely different than it is now.
Yeah. See, it's different now because we don't like work together. It's more of like, two professionals coming together to close a deal. It's like every other, kind of short-term partnership.
It's like working together with benefits.
Yeah. I don't know how
the biggest benefit is, for me, legal advice.
That is true. Free legal advice.
I don't have to call the legal hotline all the time.
But, when we had that property management company, that was, part of the problem was neither one of us had enough time to really devote to it, and that was, I think, the main reason why it didn't really work out. But, and then also we just couldn't find good people. We couldn't find good people was the main reason, but, if I had time to devote, we wouldn't necessarily have to find somebody.
Right. There was a day I remember when we were running the property management business and we took the kids to, I think it was the beach, and then we got like cookies or something after. And I think we had like just gotten there and we got a call, oh, there's something stuck in the drain. We have to go get it right now, like a Saturday afternoon. And in my head, I was like, I just got out of this working on the weekends thing. Like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah,
that was the click for me.
I went and you know what it was?
It was the sink in the drain.
It was a sink in the drain?
It was the spoon in the drain.
Yeah. There was a garbage disposal and someone ran the disposal with utensils in the drain, and a spoon or a fork got stuck. And they were like, look, this isn't working. It was like a puddle of disgustingness in the thing. And so I got a glove on and I went and reached down in there and pulled it out and then ran the disposal and it all went down. They were like, oh, okay. And I was like, why would you do that? They were like, oh no, it was like that when we got here. Okay.
Like the time when we got, I think it was like 70 calls in a row at like 3 a.m.
Oh yeah. Oh, because they got locked out.
And they got locked out and they were like, oh, we never got in. So you had to go over there and then you open it up and all of their stuff was inside. So they locked themselves out.
Yeah, they locked themselves. Well, and then they admitted that. Because I was like, well, whose stuff is this? And they were like, well, it's our stuff. And I was like, okay, so you did make it in. And they were like, yeah, I don't know what happened. I think we like left the key or I don't know what. I don't remember what the answer was, but it was like stuff like that.
It was a haze. I think that was a lesson in when to quit.
Yeah, we talked about this the other day. Yeah, we talk about this all the time. That like sometimes, like in general, quitting is not good. And, we're not going to teach our kids to just quit if it gets hard. But there are times where you should just cut your losses. And what we talk about is usually in those times, it's apparent. It's like hitting you in the face.
That was very apparent. There were no profits. There were some, but
it wasn't enough to justify it.
The people we were referring business to furnish the properties were making more money than we were at that time.
Yeah. And I'm not one to count everyone's beans, but like, it's when you're putting in a lot of effort and you got people working for you, and I'm using the term working very loosely. When you got that and, you have to step in often to put out fires. I mean, it's got to be worth it, and it wasn't. It just simply wasn't.
So there's a lot of people right now looking for jobs, and maybe they're in a similar job market that you were in when you got out of college. What would you recommend to somebody looking for a job? Like, you and I have both seen some trends in people that we've hired that maybe they want the cash money before putting in the effort. What advice would you give to somebody? Because I don't think it's necessarily the person's fault. I think there's a mindset overall by seeing social media and people being like, oh, I made $1 million drop shipping, or I made money doing this get rich quick thing. You've seen from the behind the scenes in real estate, like it's not that way. What advice would you give to somebody that is maybe struggling with that?
I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think some of the younger generation has like an inflated perception of themselves, and so they think they deserve more than what they're getting. But in reality, nobody's just going to give you what you want. You have to earn it, right? And by earning it, that means that you have to maybe work for less than what you think you should be getting for a little while and show the person, hey, look at how good of a job I'm doing. Look at what kind of money I'm making for you, And then that's when you go and ask for a raise, or they probably will voluntarily give you a raise, which we were always willing to do if somebody was working hard and like producing for us. But, a lot of people just have this idea that, like, there was a video that I think went viral. You probably saw it, of that girl who graduated from whatever whatever degree she had, and she was like crying about like how she doesn't have any real world experience, and because of that nobody wants to hire her. And she's like, well, how am I supposed to get the experience? I mean, I remember thinking that when I came out of law school, because the other thing that we didn't really get to is when I came out of law school, the labor market still wasn't that great, especially up in the New York, New Jersey area. So it was hard for me to find a good legal job, which is the reason why I came back down here to take over my dad's business, because he said he was retiring. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, that seems like a good decision. But anyway, so to back up, I think, I mean, you could tell someone this all day, but they're, unless you're receptive to criticism, I don't think you're actually going to take this to heart. But you kind of just gotta like work your ass off for a little bit and just let people kind of walk all over. I mean, when you're the low man on the totem pole, you're the low man on the totem pole. Like, you don't get to call the shots and like tell people we had people who had no experience giving us business plans. And like and this was multiple different people that didn't know each other. It's
like, you're giving me a business plan, but you didn't take out the trash for 2 weeks. It's like, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
If you're not doing the basics, don't elaborate on that.
Yeah. So, to me, all that signals is that there's some sort of delusion there. Right. And I think, and I'm not trying to paint. What's the generation?
Gen Z.
Is it Gen Z?
Is it Gen X or Gen Z?
No, X is my brother, I think.
Gen Z.
He's older. Whatever. So whatever the younger kids, let's just call them the younger kids. They're not all this way. I've met some younger people that have something on the ball, but it's, and I think it has something to do with social media. I think you're right about that. I think they see like, oh, how easy it is for some of these people. And it wasn't easy for most of them, right? And also, I think a lot of them are lying. You don't have a way to verify that Joe Blow made $1 million drop shipping. I mean, he could just be making that up.
That is true. Whenever I've gone in to like kind of fact check those things, not even fact check, but it just reveals itself, like where you think that somebody has it so much better, or you think that they've like quote unquote figured it out or like hacked something. It's usually not the case.
No.
And people are obviously going to share what's most extraordinary, or like, you know, I post a lot about manifestation, but in the back of my mind, even if I'm setting like a really big goal, I still picture it as, how am I going to expect to achieve more than the person that's put in more work than me? That would be almost greedy in a way, like to expect that.
I call it delusional.
Delusional, but
as you said.
Yeah, it's well, that's like the new trend on TikTok or social media, is like you want to be delulu. But there's a point where you are going to be disappointed because like, I'm so glad I didn't go to law school, because I had a full picture of like, okay, this is what it's actually going to look like sitting on it at a desk, you know, reading.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing most of the time. It's reading. And then like, you know, I get some people who are like, oh, do you want to read X, Y, and Z book? I'm like, no, I don't. I read every day, and it's boring reading, right?
Yeah.
So like when I go home for fun, I don't want to have like fun reading.
No, like your eyes are in pain.
Yeah.
My eyes would be in pain. If I had to sit, honestly, like my personality does not work that way. I would not be a good lawyer, I don't think.
I mean, you know, it's definitely, I think, a personality thing. I think there was a lot of kids in my first year of law school that dropped out, and I think they realized it wasn't for them.
Yeah.
You know, and so like that's part of it. That's why I say maybe you should take some time between college and law school. You know, I mean, you know, the legal profession isn't going anywhere. You don't need to jump in immediately. So, you know,
unless ChatGPT comes.
Oh, that's a whole other story. Yeah, you guys are all screwed. Just forget it. Don't even do it. AI is going to take your job anyway.
Have you tapped into AI at all for your business?
No, actually, I haven't. I don't need to. I mean, I'm not saying I know everything.
It's
but, you know.
not as like, and maybe I'm not using it in the way that some people are using it, but it's not as, it's groundbreaking, but I don't think it's going to be next year that people are going to be using ChatGPT instead of a lawyer, you know?
But eventually, like things like LegalZoom came around and started doing stuff. You know what LegalZoom is, right?
Contracts?
Yeah, they do a bunch of others, like minor stuff that like you really don't need a lawyer for. It's just a lot of people don't have the confidence to like fill things out on their own.
Right, right.
So like LegalZoom came in and filled that void for people who wanted like super cheap legal advice or documents. Like if somebody wanted like a really simple, cheap will, I think you can go to LegalZoom and pay a few $100 and get a cheap will. I mean, you go to any other lawyer, they're going to charge you thousands of dollars because it takes time and, you know, there's some liability there. But, you know, so there's always something that comes along that like fills a void. And I think AI will fill a void in the legal market. Maybe there's no actual void, but like, you know, getting cheaper legal representation or advice or what have you is always what people want. So if that brings that to the masses, then I don't see why it's not going to take off. When it'll happen, I don't know. Nobody really knows, I guess, but it's coming. It's happening.
When you deal with people who own their own businesses, and you yourself own your own business, I do, I've found that when I get sued or have some kind of thing where I could sue someone, 9 times out of 10, I'm just like, I don't want to deal with this. But I've found that it's like a necessary evil almost, that like you kind of have to face those things. What would you say, is it better to be the person who is, I don't want to say passive, but letting things go in business from your experience of what you've seen from other people? Is it better to be that person and just like stay in your lane, or is it better to fight so that you get used to fighting back?
I don't think it's really one or the other. I would say it's a little bit of both. I think you have to like analyze the situation and see what's best for that situation, right? Like, I mean, there's some times where, and we've had to deal with stuff like this, where it's not worth it. Your time or your money or just the like emotional toll it takes to have to like be in a disagreement or argument with somebody. Sometimes it's not worth it to go down that road. And sometimes it is, right? And so you have to like kind of be smart about picking and choosing your battles. And And yeah, I mean, you know, if you are going to go down that road and fight somebody and hire lawyers, I mean, just know that lawyers are the ones that win every time, all the time. So
That's what I hear. They're the ones that get the big bucks, and you might just get an ego satisfaction.
I mean, even if it goes to a lawsuit and you win a judgment or something, I mean, at the end of the day, you spent tons of money on a lawyer. Sure, you may be able to recover some of that or all of it from the other side, but a lot of times you can't. And so, like you just said, it's kind of just like an ego boost, I guess.
I think about the gray hairs I would avoid if I don't go forward.
Yeah, if you don't, yeah.
Like I'm like, do I want wrinkles for an unknown amount of time?
Yeah, no, it's not worth it. I mean, I guess that's kind of what insurance is for in a lot of situations, you know, business insurance.
Okay, I know that this is probably not the question to ask at the end, but what is title?
Okay. So title insurance.
Yeah, what is title insurance?
So I
know what title is, but
I had a feeling this question would come up, obviously. So I was kind of like thinking about it, and like obviously I know what it is, but I was thinking about like the best way to say this. But I think it would be helpful to explain that some time ago, people used to just buy properties from other people, and that was it. I mean, they would do, you know, like a lawyer would go down to the courthouse and pull documents that have been recorded just to see if there's like liens or whatever. So, I mean, there was some protection, but there was never insurance backing whatever your lawyer did.
Were those the handshake days?
Yeah, well, even before that, that's what I was just going to say. There was nobody doing that. I mean, you could just buy something, you can hand somebody cash for a deed, and that was that. And you took whatever that was, right? It could have been nothing. They could have just given you a BS deed. So, I mean, you fast forward, and, you know, I'm skipping over a lot of stuff here, but if you fast forward to recent times, the title insurance industry was created to basically be a backstop for homeowners, because in most cases, the purchase that you're making is probably the biggest financial decision you're going to ever make, or at least up to that point, it was the biggest one you've ever made. So, you know, and that's where insurance comes in, right? I mean, in some aspects of our life, insurance is required, like if you drive a car, but, you know, for owning a home, if you're going to spend $600,000 or more, or even if it's less, you want to make sure what you're buying is what you bargained for, right? And that there's no issues that are going to come up in the future that cost you money or even title to the property. So that's what title insurance does. It protects you for anything that could have happened prior to your ownership. And it's, I think, honestly, I'm not a fan of insurance. I'm never like the guy who's like, oh, insure everything at all times, you know, but like, this is the one thing where it's like kind of a no-brainer. You know, it's not like you pay insurance, title insurance every year. You pay it one time at closing. It covers you for as long as you own the property. And, you know, it's a peace of mind that I think is worth it. And it's, the premiums for it are set by state statute. So it's not like I get to just charge people whatever I want, you know? So no matter what title company or attorney you get title insurance from, you're going to be paying what you should be paying. So, you know, I mean, it's, I think it's a worthwhile thing to have. And if you're getting a mortgage, you're almost required to have it. I'm not going to get into why it's an almost requirement, but if it's a cash deal, you do have a choice. And there are some people who decide not to get title insurance. And at least in my business, whenever someone comes in and says, if it's a cash deal and they say, we don't want to pay the title insurance, I say, okay, well then you got to take this deal somewhere else, because I'm not doing the deal unless you get insurance. Because guess what happens if something bad happens? They're going to come back and sue me because they don't have any insurance to back them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's it's not that I don't have confidence in what we do, but like there's a lot of third parties we rely on to get information from. And if one of those people make a mistake, well, then I'm on the hook. And so I won't even do those deals where people say they don't. It's not often that it happens, but there are some people who do that. We've come across a lot of people recently in cash deals who don't want to get homeowners insurance, which I also think is a little crazy, especially down here with hurricanes and stuff.
Yeah.
So, those folks are out there.
I mean, you've definitely taught me to be very by the book with those things. And I feel like you're very detailed with that kind of stuff. Did you always operate that way?
I mean, look, I'm no like Boy Scout, but yeah, I mean, I need to be able to sleep at night. And the things that keep me up besides our children are, like knowing that like I don't ever want to like take advantage of somebody, like that's why I don't want to get into too much detail, but like in our business, there are certain ways you have to disclose fees and costs, right? And one of the things is you're supposed to lump a bunch of fees and costs together in one, like a closing fee or something, or settlement fees. It shows up on a closing statement. I do that as much as I can because you're required to, but I also like to separate things and like itemize stuff so that people see like, oh, this is what this is for, right? I'm not trying to hide the ball.
Yeah.
Right. And that kind of thing is important to me because I don't want people to walk away from an interaction with me thinking like they got fleeced or that I was taking advantage of something or, I just want people to have a good taste in their mouth after dealing with me, and you are not going to please everybody. I've learned that too, that some people you can't please them. But you try your best to and try and be fair. And that's just how I operate. And so in operating that way, I mean, certain things happen, like, just doing things by the book. 'Cause I don't want either the headache, even if a lot of times the other person doesn't even know something bad could have or did happen, but right? And I don't want to have that on my conscience. So,
and there's so many moving parts in a real estate transaction. So there's so many opportunities for people to say, oh, I'm just going to skip that part, or I'm just going to like make it easier for this deal to go by. But if you operate that way, it's like a slippery slope, I think. I think if you keep a standard, you kind of trust that you're always on that standard. So there's nothing like if somebody calls you with an issue, pretty much what it is, or like, within those guidelines that you've set where you're like, I'm not going to operate outside of this like moral compass or this.
Yeah. And there's standards. A lot of,
because as you know, in your practice, if you own a business, whatever kind it is, bringing in that influx of business is super important. It used to be a lot of lunches, a lot of that kind of outreach. What do you see it kind of heading towards? Is it more virtual? Do you think that there's other ways to get business?
Yeah, I think, this is a better question for you because you're like on the forefront of this stuff. I think social media is really the way you should be. I'm not on social media.
You are now.
You can't find me anywhere really, but I do think that is really the future. But, there's no substitute for like meeting people, right? I mean, a lot of your business comes from like just meeting people.
In person.
Same thing with me. I mean, I meet somebody, I do some work for them, they like it, they refer other people to me, they come back and do other things. So, there's no substitute for that, I think, at the end of the day.
I think that's a good point too. There's certain things that there aren't a substitute for. You can't just like jump over certain things. And one of those things is managing people. What's your least favorite thing about managing people?
Probably, and I'm going to say this, but like the people that I have, they're good.
Amazing.
I don't really have any problems with them, but I just know from others in the past that the least favorite thing is just dealing with everyone's problems. Like everyone comes with their own set of problems. And like, if you're a small business, You don't have an HR department. Like, I don't have a person that I can go to that I could say like, hey, take this to Nancy in HR. Like, I don't want to hear it.
I'm Nancy.
Yeah. So, like, and then you got to deal with that kind of stuff. And, other people's problems become your problems, but then you've got your own problems. And that part, I guess, is a little difficult.
Yeah. Sometimes I lay awake at night thinking about the problems of the people who work at the business. And then I'm like, what am I doing? But it's kind of a natural reaction because you care about the people who work for you.
And their problems are actually your problems.
That's true.
I mean, it's not like it's just totally, we'll let them deal with it.
What would you say to someone? Because I think there's so much rhetoric behind obviously protecting like the rights of employees and like, their work atmosphere and making sure it's not a toxic atmosphere. But you and I talk a lot about the fact that no one's really going to feel bad for like the owner of a business. You're the last person people are going to feel like sympathy for. What are things that you do to kind of just deal with the day-to-day of the pressure of having all of that on your shoulders? Especially deals that if they're messed up, there's a lot on the line. Like if you mess something up or an employee messes something up where it's not your fault, like there is a lot of pressure. So how do you deal with that?
I feel like I'm probably the wrong person to ask about this because I just have like a weird attitude about stuff like that. That kind of stuff doesn't bother me as much as it probably should. I think that's probably the problem.
It's probably because you're a guy.
No, but I mean, well, not really, because you remember earlier in my career, going back to the thing we were talking about, I used to carry a lot of stuff with me. Right? I used to be more like irritable and angry from work. Right. And I kind of like a few years ago just had like a mindset shift where none of that is helpful, and all it does is just make you miserable. So if you can avoid taking on the grief that comes with putting out fires and the problems, easier said than done. But like, if you can like separate that from everything else, then I mean, you'll be better off, because at the end of the day, you can't control what other people do or say. You can just control how you react to the situation. And, it's funny because I played sports, as you know, growing up, and like the one thing that they tell you, all your coaches growing up would be like, oh, these playing sports has a lot of life lessons from it. And I always used to be like, get out of here. We're playing football. Like, how could this? But the older I get, the more I realize they're right. It's the intangible stuff. It's like, during a game, things go wrong. It's not always, great. And it's the way that you come back from that, and it's this isn't like revolutionary. I mean, everyone knows this, and it's kind of corny, but it is true. It's not, of course you want to prevent problems, but you're not going to prevent them all. And the way that you handle it and recover from it says more about you than whether or not you can prevent all problems. Yeah. 'Cause it's almost impossible to do that.
I agree with that.
So, the sooner you realize that problems are going to happen, you just want to make sure that they're not major problems. And then, being able to calmly deal with them without getting too emotional about it, I think is important for your own mental health at the very least.
And I think it probably teaches you, obviously, about not being a sore loser, which can also go into your business life. I didn't really do sports to that level at all. I was in cheerleading, but it was like, I didn't take it seriously. But I always admired athletes because I was like, okay, they have to sacrifice things. Like they have to not be at the party until a certain time. They have to like check in or like whatever. I remember in school, or they have to, take their weekends to go practice and stuff like that. And when things haven't worked out in my own work life or things that I've like put a lot of time and effort into where it doesn't work out, sometimes I'm like, in the moment, I'm like, this is so unfair. Like how, like you want to look for the person to be mad at. But then I think, okay, if I was like an athlete and I was practicing for an entire year for like one event, like one game, and we lost, that doesn't mean that like you get to go then blame everybody around you for that happening.
Yeah, I mean, that's another good thing that you learn from sports is that, as a team, you win and lose together, and you are going, in most cases, you are going to lose.
Yeah, like expecting that.
Losing is part of playing the game. And so you get, I don't want to say you get used to it, although I did a lot of lose. I was on some bad teams when I was a kid. But, you just learn to deal with it.
Yeah.
And that does, I think, help you later in life deal with real life problems. Now, obviously, losing a football game when you're a child is like, but, to a child, that's their whole life. So I do think there's some parallel there.
Well, the other day when I was having a vent session to you and I was like, this isn't working out. You were like, the answer most of the time is going to be not to quit. And that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned in our relationship because, like I said, like in sports, my parents were very like, if you don't like it, just quit. Like it's not a big deal. And I struggle sometimes with the mental thing of like, do I stick with? Is it dumb to stick with something? Blah, blah, blah. But I think a good takeaway for people listening is if they're on the fence about something, sticking with it is probably most of the time the right thing to do.
Yeah, like we said before when we were talking about that management company, I mean, in most cases, quitting should be so obvious that it's almost like you don't have another choice.
Right.
Like if you're in business and you're losing money every month and it's going on for months and months, it's either time to make a drastic shift or cut your losses, right? That's like slapping you in the face. But, if you're struggling, you're still making some money and it's not as good as you thought it was going to be. Yeah, no, I don't think quitting would be the answer in that scenario. Yeah, I mean, maybe you should change the podcast from the evolution of confidence to most of the time probably shouldn't quit.
Most of the time probably shouldn't quit. Instead of just do it.
Yeah.
Probably don't quit, but maybe quit.
Yeah, but that doesn't fit on a t-shirt, so I guess it doesn't work.
Well, this is my last question for you, for the audience. When you saw me on Tinder, what was your first thought?
Oh, so this is from a question from your audience?
Oh, no, I wrote this question.
Oh, okay. When I saw you on Tinder, so everyone, I guess, knows that that's how we met.
Yes.
Yeah. What did I think? I thought you were a catfish, to be honest with you. I was like, there's no way this girl is on here. There's no way. I was like, that cool. Also because, you didn't see what was there before you. I was like, wow, this is slim pickings, But, yeah, I didn't think you were, I thought I was going to show up and you were going to be like a guy or something, something ridiculous.
There was a moment.
Which I've had happen.
When a guy?
Not a guy, but like it was the person, it wasn't their picture or it was like years ago and it did look nothing like them.
I remember when we met at Houston's, it was like a very much like a la 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 moment because Stephen like tapped on my shoulder and I had already gotten a beer and my hair flipped in the most perfect, it was like, whew, and I could feel, I was like, damn, this is like my hair is flipping right now. And I saw my prince and I thought, honestly, because you had glasses at the time, I was like, wow, like what a sweet, like he's definitely super smart, super almost like a nerd a little bit. And I like that. And then you were like, no, I'm not a nerd.
Yeah, no. I mean, I don't know. What's a nerd? What's considered a nerd?
I think you can be a nerd about certain things. Like I'm a nerd about Canva.
Yeah. Yeah, you love Canva.
I fucking love Canva. Canva is my president.
It's like the number one thing. You'll do that before setting up the party.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, I remember that too. When the whole hair flip thing, it's true. That did happen. You like, it's like you went like this. And, yeah, then I think we stayed there till it closed, didn't we?
We did. And I scraped my Nissan Altima on the way horrendously. So I said, this date better be worth it. And it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was late.
You were late
to the date. You were early. Wow. That was like the first and last time you were early to something, or at least on time.
So you have time blindness, not me. Not me. Okay. This is my really last question, because we really have to
Okay.
If you could be any movie character, what would it be? It could also be a cartoon.
Ratatouille.
Ratatouille! That's perfect, because we have a family of rats.
Yep, that's right.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on the Evolution of Confidence. You are the VIP guest.
Very nice.
And guess what that means?
A very important person.
It means you get to hang out with me the rest of the day.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you want to share as far as where you work and where people can find you?
Yeah, so Landmark Title Services, that's the name of the title company. And then I obviously have a law firm that's just a solo practice. So it's just my name, Stephen C. Albertine, PLLC. Unfortunately, I don't really have social media. Although I think, didn't you create an Instagram?
An Instagram. It's called Landmark Title Steve.
Yeah. Okay. So there's that.
I think I'm going to make you a caricature, and then I'll post that guy.
Why not?
So, because I know you're not going to let me take a bunch of videos and pictures. I'm going to have to make you a cartoon.
No, yeah. But I mean, if you're looking for, I do real estate law, contract work, estate planning, landlord tenant stuff, a lot of transactional work. So if you need help with anything, you can find me on the internet. You can Google my name. I'll show up there. I don't know. Should I give my email address and phone number? I don't know.
Give your email.
So I'll just give you my law office email. It's Stephen, Stephen. That's right. It's
with a PH.
It's a PH. Classy. At albertinelaw.com. And so if you would like to send an email and set up an appointment or what have you, be my guest.
It might be a rat answering.
It may be a ratatouille.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
I love you.
I love you too.
And I love you guys for watching. Thanks for watching The Evolution of Confidence. I'll see you next time.